Hello and welcome to Agenda 2030. We are glad to have you join us. I am Toyin Nkamiang John. Like you already know on this show, we showcase to our teaming viewers, stakeholders' efforts towards the attainment of SDGs in Nigeria. And as usual, you can always watch this program and other episodes by subscribing to our YouTube channels on youtube.com/Fresh News TV and youtube.com/Agenda 2030 TV. You can also watch the program live on Facebook. Just log on to www.facebook.com/Fresh News NG and www.facebook.com/Agenda 2030 TV. Follow us on all our social media platforms at Agenda 2030 TV on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Remember to drop your comments and share with your contacts. Do use the hashtag Agenda 2030 and hashtag Agenda 2030 TV.
The Senior Special Assistant to the President on Sustainable Development Goals, Princess Adejoke Orilokpe Adefulure, has assured that her office will continue to take practical steps to ensure effective tracking and monitoring process for the successful implementation of the SDGs in Nigeria, as well as to guarantee that the development vis-a-vis program and policies of stakeholders effectively and positively impact the vulnerable class in the country. The presidential aide made this known when a delegation from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development (OECD) paid her a visit to ascertain Nigeria's efforts in the implementation of the SDGs. The delegation also wanted to be acquainted with the tracking of the inflow and outflow of resources for sustainable development for the purpose of accountability and proper management of development financing as it relates to the total official support for sustainable development (TOSSD).
The tracking exercise, as I said, has been the mapping exercise has been done, and we have identified the indicators and targets that going forward due to our own priority projects for SDGs. We promise that that's what we've been doing, and we'll continue to do that to ensure that we leave no one behind, and we state on our target and indicator that we have identified so far. And we intensify sensitization and advocacy on SDG so that everyone is carried along. Because SDG is about people, it's about prosperity, it's about peace, it's about planet, and it's about a partnership. So we continue a partnership with our stakeholders and major stakeholders, and also we will ensure that we maximize all the opportunity and the possibilities for the people of Nigeria.
Expanding on their visit, policy analyst and economist at OECD, Guillaume Delalande, highlighted their threefold mission, which includes conduct of a pilot study to track the in- and outflow of resources for sustainable development. He also gave assurance to help secure financial support and technical backstopping for the overall implementation of the SDGs in Nigeria.
With this new measure of total official support for sustainable development, we hope to incentivize more resources towards the SDGs in Nigeria, and hope that this will contribute to each and every one of the goals that are behind me, so that the people of Nigeria continue to enjoy education, health, throughout the country. So we are all committed to support these goals, and we'll do everything we can to support Nigeria in this endeavor.
One of the anchor pillars of the SDGs is Goal 16, which provides for peace, justice, and strong institutions. In the framework, the crafters of the global agenda followed this up with Target 10, which seeks to ensure public access to information and protect fundamental freedoms in accordance with the national legislation and international agreements. These targets also protect the rights of journalists as well as guarantee free speech. And in line with the tradition of celebrating the Global Press Freedom Day every year, the Nigerian Union of Journalists recognized frontline practitioners who have shone as torchbearers and defenders of press freedom. It is believed that conscious implementation of the targets of Goal 16 will no doubt impact the overall indices of the SDGs.
I am Guillaume Delalande from the OECD. You're watching Agenda 2030.
Agenda 2030, showing on this channel. Agenda 2030, leaving no one behind.
In our next interview, my colleague Ehosa Egumbo will be speaking with the Global Director of the United Nations SDGs Action Campaign, Michel Toomey, who gave an insight into the global philosophy behind the adoption of the SDGs by world leaders. He also praised the efforts by Nigeria in this direction. Enjoy it.
Today on the program is the Global Director of the UN SDGs Action Campaign. That's Michel Toomey, all the way from New York. Thank you very much for joining me on the program today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yes. You've been in Nigeria for about 3 days now, so how's the experience been so far?
I'm excited. I see a lot of activity. I see a lot of very senior officials taking the SDGs very seriously. Okay. But in addition to that, I see a lot of young people that are ready to go, and they're asking what can they do and how can they take this forward. So it's very exciting.
Okay. Now, the SDGs Action Campaign is basically meant to foster an all-inclusive agenda and, of course, collaborate with partners. Now, how is this coming along for you?
Well, we have a lot of great engagement. As you know, the UN has been doing these kind of large goals for some time. There were the MDGs. Perhaps we can talk a little bit about that. But there has already been a great network of partners coming together around those goals. So they've been able to re-channel their energy towards the SDGs. But, it's a complicated agenda. There's a lot in there, and everyone needs to take their own role. And I already see private sector companies, civil society groups, and governments and academia coming together to do just that.
Yeah, I can already see that your mandate is clearly spelled out now. That include, among other things, engaging stakeholders and individuals to support member state and, of course, UN country teams, and encourage public ownership of the SDGs and sponsor people-driven processes. Now, how easy has this strategy engagement been, particularly here in Nigeria?
Well, the first challenge is just getting people to be aware of these goals. What we've found is once people are aware of them, they start to get very interested because these are issues that are not just abstract development issues, but are issues that affect them on a day-to-day basis. For example, better internet connectivity or road safety or water sanitation issues. I mean, these are the everyday issues that people are facing. So they're very relieved to see that there is this comprehensive agenda that's trying to tackle them.
Now, what would you say has been your major challenge so far in leading your advocacy campaign?
Well, the challenge is that our goal is to leave no one behind and to partner with everybody. And so you can imagine getting those kind of massive partnerships going is complicated. There's no one party that's more responsible than others. So when you have a group like that, who actually is in charge, right? Yeah. So the challenge is how do you create very balanced multi-stakeholder groups where young people feel like they have as much right to be participating as the government officials. Okay. So that's a challenge, and it's different in every country. You have to adapt to the cultures and norms of each country to take that forward.
Okay, perhaps is there any kind of funding or any funding process for civil society organizations and perhaps other groups who may want to champion the advocacy campaign?
There are lots of different organizations who are putting funding forward in what we call a challenge model, so that there are specific challenges of can people go out and activate their mayor or their local government, for example. Yeah. So there are specific funds for that through different UN organizations and programs, but also through foundations and private sector companies. So the UN is not the primary funding partner in this SDGs. It's a new model where we're looking at countries to find the wealth of their own nations to drive towards this. So we're seeing a great example of that here in Nigeria, where there are a number of activities that are welcoming young people and others and civil society organizations to join in the challenge.
Okay. Perhaps I should take you back to the very beginning, just a little bit. Now, the Millennium Development Goals 2015, I don't know, given the misgivings, I mean, over the uneven success recorded, right, would you say that the MDGs made a change?
I think they made a change in the mindset of how do you measure progress? What are we all striving towards? Before the MDGs, there were lots of specific programs with specific targets, but we didn't see the whole picture together. Just because we can't accomplish it doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Just because we can't have the answers right in front of us doesn't mean we can't challenge ourselves to do so. They say the first step is, you can't manage what you can't measure. So the first idea is, what is the ideal? What are the ideal outcomes? How can we create measurements for that, even if at this point in time we don't know how to do so? We used to say it would be great if we could connect all the people in the world together in some kind of communications where we could share knowledge. But before mobile phones and the internet, we really didn't know how to do that. But along came this technology, and that very ambitious goal became a reality because of the innovation we saw in the internet and mobile technology. So you have to aim high. You have to challenge people. And even if you don't finally succeed, you can take that success forward, as we see in the SDGs. If you look at some of the first of the SDGs, they really have the MDGs, the unfinished business of the MDGs embedded in it. So we didn't abandon the MDGs, we built on top of those.
Okay, but now how do we begin to, allay the fears of these skeptics amid all of these misgivings? How do we begin to encourage them, to let them key into the Sustainable Development Goals?
Well, the issues of the goals are universal, and these issues were here before the goals started, and the goals are just simply a way to frame these issues in a way that everyone is on the same level playing field. Every country in the world is trying to figure out how to tackle these goals. There are misgivings everywhere, but what everyone sees as an opportunity is this universal nature of the goals. Everyone can rally around the same objectives, and we're finding that large companies and private sector foundations and others are using the goals to align their investments and their spending as well. So by putting them on paper, by stating out loud that these are the goals that people deserve, we start to see action that otherwise wouldn't have happened.
Okay, now given the level of commitment we got with the MDGs, do you see UN member countries realizing the targets of actualizing the SDG goals?
We're already seeing some progress, and the great thing about the SDGs is if you look carefully, some of the progress has already been undertaken, and it's just a question of recognizing that and recording the progress that's been made. We can't assume that everyone is going to march along the same path and make exactly the same progress at the same time, but everyone has an equal right to try, and everyone has an equal opportunity to show how they can present their best case.
Okay. Now, the first and second goals on the SDG is ending poverty and, of course, ending hunger by the year 2030. Now, how feasible do you think this is, given the fact that we couldn't even meet the target of having the proportion of people who are suffering from hunger in 2015?
Well, a lot of countries were actually able to make enormous strides towards the MDGs. Not all countries achieved the targets that were set forward, but enough did that it gave the member states of the UN the kind of confidence to say, let's go even further, let's make this even more ambitious. Who knows what kind of innovations are going to be out there in these areas. The other important distinction is that the poverty and the hunger goals are now seen as if we solve the other goals in the set, poverty and hunger start to become less and less an issue because of the other developments in other sectors of the economy. So they're all interconnected. You can't just choose one goal and try to achieve that one. You have to try to chip away at progress on all of them, and suddenly you see progress amongst all of them.
But of course, we know that if we focus on, we don't necessarily have to focus on one goal, but there's one key goal that encompasses all of them. And I'm not talking about inequalities now, which obviously is a major factor here.
Absolutely.
In achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, this is caught across all sectors, regionally, socially, and economically. Now, the problem now is the rich is getting richer, the poor is getting poorer. But how then do we begin to bridge this gap to ensure that all of this is controlled, is checked?
Well, I think the first step is recognizing it and making a concerted effort to do so. This is the first development scheme where there has been an international agreement that there needs to be something to tackle inequalities. I think before that it was really just, can we grow our economy? Can we have a large, robust GDP without thinking of what happens within that number? Who's actually benefiting and who isn't? So at least now we are just as it's an equal goal just to the hunger and health and education, inequalities now stands right alongside them as one of the primary goals that will drive development in a society.
Okay, now let's talk about the implementation process and how easy or cumbersome is it to achieve its core objectives?
Well, that's where we are right now. This is, the goals were agreed by member states in the year 2015 to almost 2 years ago. So we've had 2 years of countries putting together their plans, preparing their organizations, starting to think about how they'll implement. Every summer we have a session at the United Nations called the High Level Political Forum, where countries can come and voluntarily put their plans on the table or put their progress reports on the table. This July, in just a few weeks, the government of Nigeria will present their status report to the United Nations, and then that will be available to all Nigerians and people of the world to read about how far they've come. But this is the important thing. The UN doesn't have the answers. We are the facilitator to make this conversation happen. The answers have to come from the societies themselves and the government commitments. So we're really anxious to see this kind of peer pressure, perhaps, amongst nations to see who can get these goals going the fastest.
Okay. Now you had a meeting with the National Assembly. How do you see the lawmakers? How do you see the parliaments actually accelerating the process of achieving or attaining the Sustainable Development Goals?
Well, what we realized in the MDGs was that we perhaps didn't focus enough on the power of the parliamentarian, the power of the representative of the people in this process. And there's really 3 main areas where they can help. One is on accountability, keeping the ministries and the other government functions honest about how much progress they're making.
Yes.
The other is budgeting, obviously. Where does the money go? How can the money be put towards these development projects in a coherent way? And the third is actually advocacy. And as you mentioned, our campaign is primarily an advocacy engine. And what we found is that parliamentarians already have the voice of the people in their ear, and they have the ability to take this forward. So parliamentarians are enormously important in the SDGs.
Okay. Now talking about budgeting, which of course, comes to funding.
Yeah.
Now we know that we've had a problem of funding some of these programs with the MDGs. But now, how is the UN helping countries to mobilize funds to see that some of these programs are well carried out?
Well, what we're seeing is a number of new actors coming into play that want to put their investments on the table. It's not just international aid. We know that the whole package, if you look at globally, of the aid business is about $130 billion a year, which sounds like a lot. Oh. But the global private sector and the economies are in the trillions. And so the idea is if we can get private sector companies to shift some of their spending towards programs that align with the SDGs, we'll see an enormous transformation in this effort. It's not all going to come from one source, but the fact that domestic resources can be coupled with international resources to achieve these goals is key to the goals.
Okay. I know one of the major challenges that the MDGs had was the issue of data. The data collection process. Yes. Now, of course, this is I think mainly in developing countries, right? But what can we do right now to improve this so that all the shortcomings we have with the MDGs don't resurface?
Well, as I said, there's new technologies and innovations that have come into the maturity since the MDGs. Yes. The ability to collect data on mobile phones about progress, about the people reporting in the perception of progress in their communities is a transformation. What we're seeing is what we call a data revolution, where new parts of new data coming from the private sector and elsewhere will give us a much better picture of how people are progressing through the implementation of these goals. It's not easy. There are a lot of data gaps, as we say. There's areas where we just don't have the data, but that's the first step in here, is to find ways to actually measure these things well. And not just rely on official government statistics, although that's the cornerstone of our measurement, but look at new models of big data and kind of experimental data that might be able to be collected. We also rely on citizens themselves to collect perception data and participate in the monitoring process by telling us from their perspective how things are going. Is it getting better?
Okay. Okay, maybe I'll just ask you this. What would you say is the greatest accomplishment yet since the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals?
Well, I think that the inclusion of some areas that might not have been expected was really profound, like the area of governance. Now, the MDGs were very focused on the outcomes, ending hunger or having extreme poverty. But the process of getting there has always been the complicated part, because government can help or hurt depending on how well they're set up to do these things. And so for the first time, we actually have goals where the governments themselves are being self-reflective about how well is our government process helping to deliver these goals. I also mentioned the inequalities goal. You brought that up. That's an enormous breakthrough to have that inequalities be a subject of an international agreement. But most profoundly, the fact that this was an agenda that was adopted not just by the aid professionals or a small group of experts, but by every member state of the world. Every member state came together and signed up for this. And so everyone has ownership of this, and it's their own agenda to take forward.
Okay, so having said all this, I want to believe that this is something that is achievable.
Of course, why not? It has to be. Humans achieve fantastic things. We can put men on the moon. We can connect to people across the world. Nobody ever thought this would be possible 20, 30 years ago. Why not? Why not aim high? Why not go for, this is what we call it, it's the unfinished business of humanity. It's the to-do list of humanity. Okay. We know these things need to be done. It's not up to us whether or not we should try. We have to.
Anyway, thank you very much for coming on the program. Michel Sumi, all the way from New York.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks for staying with us as we move into the audience participatory segment. Remember, you stand a chance to participate and win special prizes just by answering our weekly questions. You can also send in your questions and suggestions to the producer via the email address and phone number on your screen. And as usual, we will kick off the segment by first bringing to you views from our respondents on the streets.
Do you know about the Sustainable Development Goals?
Yeah, a little bit.
And which one of the Sustainable Development Goals is more personal to you?
Reduce inequality.
Yeah. And in what ways do you think that can help, that the SDGs can actually help the Nigerian society?
Yeah, if the inequality gap is being reduced between the poor and the rich, it will help a lot.
You know about the SDGs, Sustainable Development?
Yeah, I know.
Which one of the goals in the SDGs is more personal, more important to you?
I think it's qualitative education.
Okay, and how do you think that goal in the SDG can actually impact the society?
Okay, if everybody is educated in the country, you discover that poverty will be reduced.
Quite all right. I'm much aware of the Sustainable Development Goals. Even I have been following the program right from MDGs. Yeah, I'm most interested on the issue of education. Yes, as government is giving more support to the education. But I still want them to still look at the education as a paramount.
Well, I wouldn't say a particular one is important. All I knew, both that of poverty alleviation, infrastructure, mention it, they are all important. That which I do not attach so much string on is that of infrastructural development and that of paraventure, gender equality, because we are a culturally oriented country. We are Africans.
Zero hunger for the average man. When I say man here, it includes the whole human race. It's more important, much more important, because that is what will bring peace too. Because if people are hungry, definitely anger may also be triggered.
How do you think the SDGs is actually helping?
They're trying their best. You understand. I see a lot of NGOs are coming up with different strategies, with different approaches to making sure that hunger is curbed in the land. The government, the federal government, using Nigeria as a case in point, is also doing a lot in the area of agriculture. You know, we all understand that there are some skirmishes, there are some challenges in the area of internal crisis here and there. But then that is not debarring the government from pushing forward to making sure that food is available through agriculture. You see, so a lot is actually being done. Only that the problems of man are so much that sometimes the efforts being made by some is not even clearly seen by a lot more people, and that is why some of them misunderstand what the government is doing. Do you understand me? So that is exactly what the situation is. So a lot is actually being done, and the SDGs are actually working out something.
Welcome back. Last week we asked, what is the primary aim of my word survey in the implementation of the SDGs? The primary aim of my word survey is to ensure that the voices of the people are adequately captured in the implementation of the SDGs. And for our question for the week, The SDGs is the successor framework to the Millennium Development Goals, true or false? Do send your answers to the number and email on your screen, and endeavor to include your name and your phone numbers in your response.
Agenda 2030. As a successor framework for the Millennium Development Goals, the global community rolled out a bigger, deeper, and more encompassing framework called the Sustainable Development Goals, designed to transform our world, lift the poor out of poverty, as well as ensure inclusive and healthy society. On Agenda 2030, we take you on a media trip to the global destination of the future we want. With everyone on board, we focus on the people and their struggle, the civil society and their agitations, the government and her development effort, the Global Development Agenda, its 17 goals and 169 targets. We bring you all the deliberations, insightful conversations and high-level partnerships on the road to global destination. Agenda 2030, showing on this channel. Agenda 2030, leaving no one behind.
Remember, you can always watch this program and other episodes by subscribing to our YouTube channels on youtube.com/Fresh News TV and youtube.com/Agenda 2030 TV. You can also watch the program live on Facebook. Just log on to www.facebook.com/Fresh News NG and www.facebook.com/Agenda 2030 TV. Follow us on all our social media platforms at Agenda 2030 TV on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Remember to drop your comments and share with your contacts. Do use the hashtag Agenda 2030 and Agenda 2030 TV. And that's our package. Thank you very much for being part of the program. I am Toyin Kamiang John. We'll see you again next week. Until then.